This is just a treat for myself. It's Lynn Andrews' Star Woman book. She again encountered Red Dog. Red Dog is a white shaman who is very mean and evil and tried many times to kill Lynn. He tried to steal her power because a male shaman can only learn magic and only can gain power from a female shaman, which Lynn Andrews is. She's still in training. Her teachers are Agnes and Ruby, two Native American shamans. And in that scene, I will only read a passage in that scene, which I'm going to read. She's escaping Red Dog, who wants to kill her. And you don't know if the story of the escape is real or if it's a shamanic journey, because it's very surreal. Thank you for letting me see Orion, and also for the gift you have given me of Lynn. She is really weak and stupid, you know. She seems harmless enough, Jake said, throwing me a look. She is perfectly harmless without her teachers, Red Dog said. Drum, holding me by the arm, said, I never thought she had any power. Yeah, she was just lucky, said Ben, holding me by the other arm. Well, I have some unfinished work with her, Red Dog said. Just a loving stroke on a spot on her body, and no power can save her. The coup de grace. Hers will be an uncomplicated end. I knew Red Dog was referring to a death point, a place on the human body known to a very few sorcerers, acupuncturists and martial artists, a point that if manipulated would kill me. Nothing short of a miracle would be able to save me from physical death. Ready, Lynn? He asked. It's time to join your ancestors. He stepped toward me, making a hooked fist with two fingers protruding from it. But seeing him move towards me was like a slap in the face. I shook, trying to clear away the foggy gray, because they drugged her. The adrenaline pumped through my body. I saw the horse, Orion, turn his head and look at me, his ears pinned back just as if he had understood every word Red Dog had said, illuminated by the mellow light from the hanging kerosene lanterns. Orion seemed to burst into rainbow colors. I assumed this vision was a hallucination. As Red Dog was reaching for my left shoulder, with Ben and Drum still holding me, Orion reared up and let out a high-pitched warning. He shot forward and his head butted Red Dog, who flew back several feet, taking Drum with him. Ben still held tight, and the two of us whirled around in a circle. Jake grabbed a whip and wielded it after Orion, who was trying to trample Red Dog. The sorcerer managed to dodge the hooves. Ben let loose of my arm as Orion charged between us. To my surprise, the horse reared up and kicked Jake in the face. The old man fell against the hanging lantern. It smashed to the floor and immediately ignited the straw into a roaring blaze. Orion, now clearly my protector, came and stood near me. I grabbed a handful of silky mane and leaped up on his back as I had done as a child on my horse, Sugar, whom I had ridden bareback and free over the ranch land near Seattle. The scene was now one of total pandemonium. Jake's face was bleeding, and he beat at the flames with his shirt. Ben and Drum were running in circles, using gunny sacks on the flames to no avail. Red Dog picked up a pitchfork and held it like a spear. Orion and I raced around the enclosure. It was filled with pink, sooty smoke that boiled up in the night sky. I clung to Orion's neck for dear life, choking and coughing, tears streaming down my face. I heard yelling and coughing from the others. The whole compound had caught fire. A gas tank exploded, and I caught a glimpse of the house beginning to burn. There was nothing but smoke, smoke everywhere. I was losing consciousness from lack of oxygen. Orion reared and crashed through the enclosure. We galloped out into the labyrinthian horse maze. In all directions, horses were wild-eyed and screaming. We plunged down the corridors of the maze, and I opened gate after gate, the latches pulling easily from the top. I saw Doris, Axel, and other men opening stall doors in the barns. There was no sign of Red Dog or Jake. Ben and Drum were not to be seen either. Perhaps they had burned to death, I thought. I found a strength I did not know I had as I clung to Orion. We were heading for the main wall at incredible speed. With horror, I realized we were going to jump. Orion coiled like a giant snake underneath me, and we catapulted into the darkness. His mane still had burning sparks in it, and I could smell the charred places on my clothes. Orion landed with great power, with the sure-footedness of a wonder horse. We galloped off in the directions of the mountains. I wrapped my wrists and hands in the braided leather supporting the jeweled skull tied around Orion's neck. It held me well. The effects of the drug were coming on again in heavier waves now. I was not able to focus my eyes on any point. I lay down against Orion's neck. I had ridden all my life, but never on a horse such as this. He seemed to know where he was going, so I trusted him. His pounding hooves echoed through the forest as we fled. I do not know how I managed to stay on Orion, but I did. We headed down a sheer mountain face of shale. When I looked behind me, I saw the ominous conflagration cracking loudly. A redness stretched along the spine of the mountain. Tiny flecks of light, like fireflies, flew from Orion's hooves as they struck the shalestone. I wasn't sure what was happening. I was moving as if in a dream. There was a coldness on my face, and I felt as though I could peel layer after layer of my own face away. Then my head filled with a low, vibrating tone that was intensely painful to my ears. The effect was to distort my vision so that sky and earth became a two-dimensional plane, opening and closing in front of me. This broke up into a series of oscillating holes, and I knew I would have to select one of them to go through. I urged Orion toward the hole with the most luminosity. He veered to the left, and we broke through. The light seemed to be compressed and had a peculiar thickness. We were riding through a long cylindrical cavern. In the distance I saw a lake, shimmering black and purple in the moonlight. Vaporous bubbles cut the surface. Orion increased his speed and headed straight for the pool. Collecting his powerful haunches, head and neck arched like a swan, we dove forcefully into the water. Everything went dark. Looking back, I don't know where reality ended and the sacred dream began. What I remember becomes very hazy in places. As we went down into the depths of the lake, curious fish gathered around us. It seemed as if we could breathe there. There was no problem, as if all life force were the same in this translation. It did not matter if we were horse, human, or fish. We shared the same source of animation. The water was like the wind and felt pleasing against my cheeks and legs. Orion's mane fanned back, as did my own hair. My grasp on Orion slipped. I had to clutch at his fine hair. The tuft I held felt like billowing silk. We surged toward and downward with an undulating rhythm. Great spiral shells of mother of pearl as large as caves surrounded us at the bottom. And then what looked like coral leaves shimmered in and out of view. The water had gone through various gradations of color, but became darker as we descended deeper. Orion galloped along the sandy bottom, and I turned my head away from what I saw next. It was a wretched sight. Orion stopped, pawing at the sand and underwater moss. In front of me were acres of human bones piled several feet high. There were piles of skulls and hip bones and rib bones. I looked to my right into the murky depths and saw a woman fashioning her own body out of the vertebrae and bone parts that were scattered about her, sticking out of the sand at odd angles. She peered back at me through the gloom with cavernous eye sockets. She stood and reached out through the pale curtain of grey water, clutching at me with bony, grasping fingers. She said, "These are the bones of dead shamans who have fallen and drowned and have not made it through their shaman death." "Who are you?" I asked. "I am the goddess of your own fear. I am small, tiny. I am all these bones and all that you refuse to see. I am that which you have hidden from yourself. I am your love of fear. Let me ride with you on your white stallion, and I will be transformed forever." I gave her my arm and swung her up behind me. Orion turned back towards the great shells we had seen, and we swam over them. I felt as if I were riding on the back of a giant sea serpent. Orion knew the water so well. He swam effortlessly into a huge conch shell. I touched the hard, pearly walls. The surface felt satiny, like I imagined the underbelly of a whale would feel. The light became suddenly bright and more intense, and I felt heat. The brightness dimmed, and two beautiful women appeared. One was young and one was old. The young one was encased in fire. She reached out to me and said, "I am the goddess of your death. You are a young shaman, but if others find me in you, they can use the knowledge against you. That will be your tragedy. Take me on your white stallion, and I will be transformed forever." I stretched out my arm, and she leaped up behind me. Orion swam over the other woman, who now floated above a bed of seaweed. She appeared to be sleeping on her side. She was very old. "Excuse me," I said. She opened her eyes. "I don't mean to bother you, but Would you mind telling me who you are? She smiled. I am the goddess of your undirected thoughts, and that could mean your death at any moment. You must stay hidden. Protect your value. Dream only with intent. Take me with you on your white stallion, and I will be transformed forever. I gave the old woman my arm, and she leaped up like a puff of desert wind. Orion shot up toward the surface, and we exploded out of the water. He galloped along the shore, finding sure footing on the slippery stones. We clattered around the shore toward a meadow. It seemed to me to be morning, because the light was luxurious, but the half-moon was out in glowing orange. Orion stopped by a stand of tall trees with twisted roots protruding from the ground. The land there was open and ascended gradually. I noted that the ground was parched and burnt. We all dismounted immediately. Orion began pacing back and forth in front of us, bucking his head and whinnying for me to help him. The jeweled skull was irritating to him, and I knew what to do. Here, Orion, I called. I patted the earth. Orion came over, silhouetted in shafts of yellow light. He began to paw and dig a hole with the hoof of his powerful foreleg. In only a moment it was deep enough, and I patted him and took the skull off his foaming neck. I dropped it into the hole and, on all fours, buried it with the help of my 3 accomplices. We all shoved dirt over it and watered the newly packed earth without tears. Soon a green sprout pierced up out of the earth, and a beautiful tree grew up toward the light. Multicolored fruit hung from its branches. In front of the tree another maiden appeared. Who are you? I asked. I am the goddess of your manipulations and tricks, of your effort in the world. There is no need now for striving. You are alone. You have yourself now. Do not be afraid. Eat with me from this tree of knowledge and be transformed forever. I will eat, I said. First I fed Orion. The fruit were shaped like apples, but had a shiny, deep blue color. Then each of us ate of the fruit. The next thing I knew, I was lying on some old Indian blankets by a briskly burning campfire. My whole body ached. For a moment I could not remember who I was. The moon came out from behind, a cold, and I saw a human form, crimson and ghost-like in the fire's glow. Twin dreamers sat across the campfire from me, a very old lady, a shaman. I flinched at the sight of her, waking up quickly. I had a terrible headache. Perhaps it was a hangover from the drug Jake had given me. I was clumsy and did not have my customary coordination. Twin dreamers came around to me and knelt by my side. She carefully pushed me back to a supine position and placed a piece of quill work on my chest. How she had been doing quill work by firelight, I have no idea. I noticed that the porcupine quills were securely sewn onto the leather, making a beautiful starburst pattern. The quills felt slick and round to my fingers. It's good that you rest, she said. A long silence followed, and my mind raced over the visions and events of the past night. I am a double woman dreamer, said Twin Dreamers, finally breaking the silence with her heavily accented, guttural voice. If you are a woman who dreams in this way, everyone thinks you are crazy. She gave me a silly smile with brilliant eyes. You think I'm crazy too. One thing I know for sure, I said, we're both crazy. Twin dreamers slapped my leg and laughed convulsively. Lilla Vitkovin, she said between laughs, crazy woman. I started to laugh again, then saw that twin dreamers had become serious. I sobered immediately. People are afraid of me, she said, especially men. They say I possess men. That is not true. Men don't like my face, and I say, but what can I do? It is just my face. She shrugged, slapped my leg, and we laughed again. She leaned toward me and snatched the quillwork off my chest and began working again. The beads and quills shone like tiny star fragments in her hands. I can work like a man. I have a lot of strength. My quillwork is the very best. She pulled a thread and knotted it, breaking the thread with her teeth. Here, this is for you. It's a pouch for your horse medicine. My horse medicine? Yes, for a piece of Orion's hair. Horses are Vakan, sacred. They have the spirit. Ksun Kaukan, Yuvakan Pikin. You know Orion? How do you know? You saw a living rainbow on your horse's belly. Yes, I stared at her. The skin between my shoulder blades was beginning to crawl. I am that. I am a shapeshifter, twin dreamers. I don't understand. I remembered when the surface of Shazun's body had broken out in an eruption of colored lights. My mind felt as if it were going to split wide open, as it always felt when my shamanistic labors took me into the unknown and uncharted areas that lie just out of reach of normal rational consciousness. Twin dreamers laughed. I am that, she said, still laughing. I don't know what kind of woman you are, but here. I reached into my pocket, where I always carry a rope of sweetgrass, and put it in her hand. With heartfelt gratitude, I said. Twin dreamers lit the end of it in the campfire. I've always liked sweetgrass, she said. It is Wakam. She laughed and then smudged us, blowing smoke over us both in blessing. You saved me, I said. I have no destiny of my own. Twin dreamers is speaking. I take on the shape of another, and for moments I live that life. I am alone. I will always be alone. That is my burden and my freedom. I have no life of my own. I doctor your spirit and then I go on my way. I have no death, but I saw yours in a dream, and she rode with us and became transformed. It is good. It is Vakan. I sat upright and stared at her, trying to absorb the implications of the words she was saying. You live in the far away and then you come back? Is that it? Yes, I come back. But when you come back, you will not remember this round. Can you teach me? Maybe I can teach you something, maybe not. I know the constellations. You are not yet a shapeshifter, but I can teach you to remember your body. Yes, you can learn to go to the next circle of life experience with your body, and then bring it back to this round at will. Why would I want to do that? Because then you can choose your death. I stared at her. Tell me of your shaman journey, she said. Where shall I begin? Begin where you entered the lower world and entered the shaman lake. She placed the flat of both her hands on the earth and rocked her body back and forth. She closed her eyes, listening. I told her every aspect of the events as I remembered them, every feeling, every manifestation of the vision. Slowly, twin dreamers began to speak about the bones of fallen shamans. Those shamans fell because they would not be stripped of their flesh. Spirit lives in the bones. They could not allow themselves to go as bare bones into another realm, stripped of their identity. Those shamans were made of fears and attachments. Your goddess built herself out of fear, the fear that you have secretly hidden even from yourself, because you love it. You need it to feel alive. She was of the element of water. Your next goddess was from the element of fire. She knew of your endurance and that death can be seen in you if you lack endurance within the movement between life situations. Perseverance in following your life's dream is a special kind of endurance. First, you must identify your dream. If you fear death, it means that you are not yet living. This is not a matter of will. The old goddess was of the element of air. She appeared because you have spent a lifetime daydreaming and wallowing in your sorrows. You have no more time for this loss of vitality. That is over for you forever. The last maiden was born from the element of earth, and from the evil skull you planted there. She grew from the tears of your own Heava, your own darkness. The thirsty earth took your tears, and the evil was transformed by Mother Earth. The goddess of earth knew of your tricks and your profound efforts. But you have to learn to be loose, to be unencumbered by what you know. The knowledge that is important is first knowledge, and first knowledge is understanding that each and every act may be your last. In my language, the horse is called medicine dog. Riding on a medicine dog is balancing. You could never come to proper balance without accepting the separated aspects of your being, and that means accepting the Heava, the profound darkness of your own spirit. Some of us, the two-leggeds, she went on, now sifting the sandy earth through her fingers, are capable of murder and not simply in self-defense. We can be bought by the many-colored monsters for cheap wages, yet we judge others and become attached to them. Our nature has looked away from itself, and there is no way to make amends or track down your freedom again. The moon was lowering in the night sky behind her. At length she spoke again. There is an old legend told by the twisted hair, the storyteller. It has been told many times and in many different ways. I will tell it to you in my way. Perhaps it will help you understand your Heava, the mountain of darkness we sit upon and call our consciousness. A long time ago, up in the North Country, there was a mountain lion, and she was about to give birth to a cub. It was in the moon of the buffalo cow's fetus getting large. She knew she had to have food for her ordeal, so she went out and found a herd of sheep. She killed one of the sheep, but in the process of doing so, she died herself. The baby cub was born anyway. She was taken on by the sheep herd as one of their own. This mountain lion grew up thinking he was a sheep. A few years went by, and one day an old grandfather mountain lion came down out of the forest and saw this young mountain lion grazing on the grass like a sheep. The grandfather could not believe it. He walked down into the meadow and went up to him. Sure enough, he smelled just like a sheep. That was disgusting to the grandfather, so he grabbed the young lion by the scruff of the neck and dragged him over to the river. The grandfather forced him to look at his own reflection. He showed him he looked just like him, a mountain lion. He was not a sheep. This was a hard realization that he had spent his whole life in a masquerade. Then the grandfather and the younger mountain lion went off into the forest, and the grandfather lion taught him how to hunt. He regained his original nature. This is a medicine story that holds up a mirror for you to look upon. We were all born wild, like a mountain lion, and to live in civilization, we become sheep at a very young age. How could it be otherwise, or everyone would look like me? Twin Dreamers held out the ends of her tangled hair, which held pieces of grass. She looked like a wild thing. We grinned at each other and then laughed. Do you understand, Lynn? I think so. You're saying that our instinctual nature is represented by the mountain lion, and that it is in essence hidden and shoved down inside ourselves by the time we can talk. Yes, because our instinct is denied, it becomes deformed. It is expressed in life as your heava. So, what our psychologists call neurosis. Twin Dreamer's mouth had dropped open and she was pinning me with a quizzical look. I'm sorry, I said. Our doctors call this a demonic or dark side of the self, but now I see it is really just our innate wildness suppressed. Yes, we become tame, but we are not house pets. We are fierce and wild by nature. Movement between one life situation and another is essential. Movement or action is the key that unlocks the door to understanding. But I have said enough for now. Dream on this. Consider what is left of your instinctual nature. Remember that action is not reaction. It has a lodge of its own, she pointed. That beautiful horse grazing out there is a symbol of instinctual action. That is why when you see a horse, you become both happy and sad. That horse represents the wildness within yourself that you have never dared to become. Our eyes met, and with a little start I felt a sense of her great strength. I felt my cheeks glowing and my heart beating. I was on the verge of tears. Twin Dreamers had made me feel a sense of my whole character and not simply my vanity or my social self. She was right. I thought about all the men I had known who had misunderstood my love of horses. Then I thought of how many young girls love horses with a passion. Perhaps because of the structure of our society, we women have been able to stay closer to our instinctual nature than most men. I mentioned this to Twin Dreamers. She said, true, as teachers, as medicine women, we have to reacquaint both men and women with their total nature. We must help the males of the world to return to a creative use of instinct instead of expressing themselves through destruction and war. I started to ask more questions, but Twin Dreamers motioned with her hand. No more talk. Sleep. A poem for the next chapter. Mirror makers know the secret. One does not make a mirror. To resemble a person, one brings a person to the mirror. Jack Spicer.